History has a loud voice. It speaks of generals in polished boots, of thunderous speeches on balconies, and the deafening roar of tanks. But history is often shaped by the silent, by those who stand in the corner of a room, holding a notepad, blending into the wallpaper. In the gray, rain-slicked streets of Paris in 1940, Jeannie Rousseau was exactly that, a shadow. She was 21, a brilliant student of languages, and to the German officers who occupied her city, she was nothing more than a Fräulein with a quick pen and a submissive nod. They made a fatal mistake. They assumed that because she was quiet, she was empty. They didn't know that behind those calm eyes was a mind like a steel trap. The atmosphere in Paris during the occupation wasn't just fear, it was a heavy, suffocating boredom punctuated by terror. Jeannie worked as a translator for a commercial association. It seemed mundane. While others joined the resistance in the forests, Jeannie sat in smoke-filled rooms. She realized early on that men in power talk too much when they think no one important is listening. To them, she was part of the furniture. But as she translated their demands for grain, steel, and fuel, she began to hear something else, whispers of a miracle weapon, a shadow that would fall over London and end the war in a single night. Jeannie didn't have a radio. She had her ears and her memory. She joined a network known as Druids, led by Georges Lamarck. Her code name was Amniarix. Her mission, remember everything. She began to frequent the salons where the German staff relaxed. She was young, elegant, and spoke German with a perfect fluency. She would ask small, naive questions. "Oh, Colonel, what is that strange drawing? It looks like a giant cigar with wings." And the colonel, eager to impress the beautiful French girl, would laugh and explain the mechanics of a revolution in warfare. It was in 1943 that the stakes shifted to apocalyptic. Jeannie was working in Brittany, translating for the Germans who were requisitioning land. There she encountered officers talking about Peenemünde. They were talking about a flying bomb that didn't need a pilot. While she poured their wine, she saw it, a technical manual left open on a desk. It was a schematic for the V1 rocket. She couldn't steal the document. That would mean execution. So she looked at the complex mathematical formulas and printed them into her brain. A human mind is a fragile thing, but for Jeannie, it became a vault. For weeks, she carried the technical specifications behind a mask of polite smiles. She could see the equations when she closed her eyes. She could trace the curves of the launch ramps in her sleep. But information is useless if it stays locked in a skull. The Druids needed to get this to London, and they needed to do it before the first V weapon crossed the English Channel. Jeannie met her contact, Georges Lamarck, in a quiet corner of a café. There were no hushed whispers of glory, only the scratch of a pencil on a scrap of paper as she reproduced with surgical precision everything she had seen. When the report reached British intelligence, it caused a storm. Lord Cherwell, Churchill's scientific advisor, didn't believe it. He thought a rocket of such scale was a physical impossibility, but the details Jeannie provided were too specific to be a hallucination. Based on her memory, the RAF launched Operation Hydra, a massive bombing raid on Peenemünde. They delayed the V-weapon program by months. Jeannie, the harmless secretary, had just saved London from a premature firestorm. But the shadow of the Gestapo was long and cold. In early 1944, the Druids network began to fray. Arrests were made. Silence was broken under the weight of iron and electricity. Jeannie knew she was being watched. She could feel the gaze of the Abwehr on her back as she walked to work. Yet she refused to stop. She was offered a chance to escape to England, but she turned it down. I can still hear them talking. I can still see their maps. The end came in April 1944. It wasn't a dramatic shootout. It was a knock on the door, a group of men in long leather coats, and the sterile metallic smell of a waiting car. Jeannie was taken to the infamous Friends prison. Then began the interrogations. The Gestapo didn't realize they had a master spy. They thought she was just a courier. They beat her. They deprived her of sleep. They used every psychological trick in the book. But Jeannie did something brilliant. She played the dumb girl. She wept. She acted confused. She pretended that she was just a foolish woman caught up in things she didn't understand. She used their own sexism against them. If they thought she was too stupid to be a threat, they wouldn't look for the archive hidden in her mind. When they couldn't break her spirit, they tried to break her body. Jeannie was sent to the Ravensbrück concentration camp, and later to the salt mines of Torgau. The girl with the perfect memory was now just a number, dressed in rags, starving in the bitter German winter. But even in the camps, she remained a ghost. She watched. She remembered. She remembered the names of the guards, the schedules of the transports, the layout of the factories. She was still a spy, even behind barbed wire. The winter of 1945 was a graveyard of dreams, but Jeannie de Clermont refused to die. Her body had withered to a mere 40 kilograms, but the archive in her mind remained untouched. When the Swedish Red Cross finally evacuated her in the final weeks of the war, she was so frail that the doctors doubted she would survive the journey. Yet, as she crossed the border to freedom, she wasn't thinking of food or warmth. She was checking the names she had memorized, the names of those who had suffered beside her. When Jeannie returned to Paris, she found a city celebrating a victory she had helped architect, though no one knew her face. She didn't march in parades. Instead, she became ordinary again. She married Henri de Clermont, a fellow survivor of the camps, and they began a life built on the quiet fragments of peace. For decades, the woman who delayed the apocalypse worked as a translator. She raised her children in a house where the secrets of the rockets were buried under chores. The world only began to learn the truth in the late 1990s when the CIA and the British intelligence services declassified their files. The name of Amniarix appeared. R.V. Jones, head of British scientific intelligence, would state that Jeannie Rousseau was the most remarkable scout of the entire war. In 1993, at the age of 74, she was finally flown to Washington. There, in the heart of the CIA headquarters, she was awarded the CIA SEAL Medallion. But even then, Jeannie remained modest. She didn't see herself as a hero. To her, she was just a citizen who had a job to do. She passed away in 2017 at the age of 98, taking with her the last of the shadows she had lived in for so long. Jeannie de Clermont reminds us that the most powerful weapon wasn't the V-2 rocket. It was a woman with a sharp eye, a quiet pen, and a memory that would not break.